So I spent the last 3 years looking for someone that I thought would take the great secret of life and use it everywhere and help other people learn what it is. And I've decided, for whatever reason tonight, you're that person. Would you like to know what the great secret of life is? No. Yes, please. I've only looked for you for my whole life, you know? And so this guy is slowly morphing in my mind from maybe a drunken whack job to maybe an angel. And so he says, here's the great secret of life. I've listened to you tell Ann your story here, and you're doing what everybody does. It's like you get up in the morning, you're standing 6 inches in front of a plaster wall, and the wall's covered in red lights. And the lights are problems, worries, issues.
And so if I can move from scarcity thinking to abundance and look beyond the tyranny of the urgent today to what is possible, it's funny how our growth happens when that happens. We can't grow by just trying to stay the same every day and just be protected and safe. I was sharing with Al earlier today that there's been some stages in my life where I could really feel my growth as a human being. And others long periods of time, 10, 15 years, where it's like, life was so easy and so good, I didn't grow. Hello, everyone. This is Al Colleen and Stacy Harding coming to you with another episode of Fourth Level Conversations. We're glad to have you viewing this episode. Al and I were chatting this morning about the challenges of everyday life that we experience. We thought, everybody has those challenges every day when they wake up, and maybe the pressure of things that have to be accomplished, and we don't ever get past just the most urgent and immediate things that we wake up to each day. So we thought we'd chat a little bit about how do we get beyond that to live maybe a more peaceful and fruitful life that is beyond just the task of checking off a task list each day. So Al, you have a story that you often share with people as it relates to some thinking about how do you look beyond the tyranny of the urgent today with a story and an experience that you once had in the great little mountain town of Vail, Colorado. So Al, I'll just turn it over to you and you can help our audience understand that story.
Well, I love your terminology, Stacy. Good morning. The tyranny of the urgent. Well, what an amazing term that is. That sounds like a title to what we're worked about your 8th book you need to be writing, brother. Yeah, I had a magical experience happen that changed my life. And it's the first thing I would say about it is you never know when you're going to meet somebody or be in a circumstance that is a new door that's going to open to a whole new dimension of where your future can lead you. So if we go back, this is called the Drunken Vail story. And people who've been friends of mine, clients of mine for a lot of years, they all know this story. They can repeat it because I tell it so often. Because it was such a seminal moment in life. Maybe the most seminal moment in my life. And I love my wife and I've had kids and watched them be born and all that. But this is a different quality of thing. I think we all have a moment in our life when we're invited to follow down a channel that will lead to an experience of divinity, of the existence of divinity, whatever your term is, God, whatever. But we have this theory of God that you go to church or you go to synagogue or you go where you go. But how many of us actually ever have an experience in our life of the truth of that existence of the source? I think this was that. So the story is this. I was in an organization called the Colorado Mortgage Lenders Association. And, you'd go through 4 years on the board and then you just sort of bubble up to the top and you get to be the person that runs it. So you're the president of the CMLA. And for people inside it, it's a big deal. For anybody outside the world, it's, that 50 cents, buy you a cup of coffee, so what? But, I took it seriously because I thought of it as a very important responsibility. And when you do this, you set your own conference up in Vail, typically Colorado. And so we're up at the conference I've set up at the Vail Cascade. And I had this magical experience. You go and you check into the hotel room at the front desk. They give you your key. You go up and you throw your bags in the room. and you head down to the bar because that's where everybody is, and you're going to see old friends, and you're going to network and drink and dance and flirt and all that. Well, I'm down there playing politician. I'm down there shaking hands and kissing baby. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. You know, that artificial crap. All because it's something I saw on TV you're supposed to do as a politician, I suppose. And hopefully I was a little more sincere than that, but I felt that fraudulent. So, but I'm working my way out because it's really, I realize that this is just part of the game to play, but I've still got my own world going on in my own head. And so I decided I'm going to check out early. I've paid the proper dues, 30 minutes out. I'm leaving the ballroom where everybody was doing this, and there's a little antechamber that's where on your way to the outside there's a little room, and there's a table in the room, and there's a woman sitting at the table, Anne, who used to work for me as an underwriter, and Ann Peters, Stacy. I don't know if you ever knew Ann, but so Ann's sitting at the table, and she's with this old dude that's probably late 70s, early 80s. I need to start modifying the story because I'm rapidly becoming the old dude. If that's, I better make it up to 90. But anyway, he's this old guy, and I'm all of I don't know what I'm 46 years old or something, and so he's got 6 empty Scotch glasses lined up in front of him, Stace, and he's in the bag. I figure she needs rescuing, so I go over and sit down. And she's like, haven't seen an old friend in a while. Hey, how you doing? And so, that's an invitation for me to throw up all over her with my story. How am I doing? Glad you asked. You'll be sorry, yes. I got 3 partners, and she's of this, and he's of that, and then poor me, I'm the noble martyr, but and so I'm spewing it all over, and she nods politely at the right moments. And after about 10 minutes, the old guy kind of comes out of his drunken stupor. He looks at me and he says, I think you're the one. Well, I don't know if you've ever had any stranger wake up out of a drunken stupor, look you in the eye and say, I think you're the one. But your mind immediately mine went defensively. Like, the one what? The one I've been looking for 3 years. I'm thinking, boy, this guy, what's he looking for, a date? I mean, that's not my gig, so what's he talking about? And I said, I looked confused. He said, you're wondering what I'm talking about, yeah? He said, well, I have the great secret of life. Oh boy, here goes a drunk that's got the great secret of life. There's a shift, right? But he did have the great secret of life. I have the great secret of life. And before I tell you what it is, let me tell you who I am. I'm the CEO of the company that Ann here just went to work for. And it's the 3rd company that I started from nothing and I built up and sold to Wall Street over the last 15 years using the great secret of life. And as a result, I've got more money than God. I've got enough money that I could live 3 lifetimes on what I have now. I'm not bragging. I'm telling you how the great secret impacted me. I've got a Learjet out at the airport. I'm taking to my home in Aspen. I've got a house in Italy. You can't imagine. Now, that's the good news. Bad news. I only use the great secret of life in business to make a lot of money. And as a result, I have 2 ex-wives I pay a lot of that money to. I have 3 children that want nothing to do with me. And now I'm an old man with nothing left really to do in life but to wait to die. I've got health problems. And so I realized I've kind of blown it because I had this great wisdom, this great insight, this great gift that I got, and I only used it to make money. So I've spent the last 3 years looking for someone that I thought would take the great secret of life and use it everywhere and help other people learn what it is. And I've decided, for whatever reason tonight, you're that person. Would you like to know what the great secret of life is? No. Yes, please. I've only looked for you for my whole life. And so this guy is slowly morphing in my mind from maybe a drunken whack job to maybe an angel. And so he says, here's the great secret of life. I've listened to you tell Ann your story here, and you're doing what everybody does. It's like you get up in the morning, you're standing 6 inches in front of a plaster wall, and the wall's covered in red lights. And the lights are problems, worries, issues. They're things that you've learned you have to somehow deal with. And the way you've learned to deal with them is to push on red lights to make them go out. So you become a master light pusher outer, and you think that's what gives you value. So you spend all day desperately pushing out red lights, right? Yeah. Now, some of the lights come back on after you put them out. But by the end of the day, you put the wall mostly dark. It's probably 3/4 dark. There's still some stuff. You'll deal with it tomorrow, right? You go to sleep. You wake up the next morning. What's the wall done, son? It's all lit up again. Yep. And so you'll do it again this day, tomorrow, and the next day. And brother, you will waste your life that way. They all do. Ouch. Here's the great secret of life that guy told me. He said, you've got to make that plaster wall full of red lights a glass wall. And you have to look 3 years into the future. And you've got to see a place that you've never considered before, that inspires you, that awakens you. It gives you a sense of possibility. Now, your mind's going to naturally start going to, how do I get, is it possible? How do I get there? Don't do any of that. Just look at that place and keep your eye on that place constantly. And if you do, I promise you, somebody or something puts the red lights out for you. Huh. So I went back to my condo after this conversation with this guy, still wondering, is he an angel or a drunken whack job? And I thought, that's an interesting notion. It's a different take on goals and all that. It's more mystical that appeals to me. And maybe he's right. Maybe it's true. And so, for whatever reason, I thought about a phrase that my wife has in our laundry room that I've talked many times about, that she bought in an antique store in 1980 in Ohio, that says this: your life is a gift from God, and what you do with it is your gift back to God. And I thought of that, and I thought, I think that's true. What is my gift? And so, before I go on, I'd ask you who are watching this podcast, ask yourself that question. What is your gift that's unique to you in all of history, all of humanity? So I asked myself, what is my gift? And I thought, I think my gift is to help other people find their gift. And I don't think I can do that running a mortgage company. I guess I have to sell my mortgage company. Well, how do you do that? And I don't know. Just keep your eye on that thing 3 years up. 3 years from now, I'm going to be in a different reality practicing my gift. And sure enough, magically, amazingly, over the next 3 months, I'd overhear a conversation in an elevator. I'd read a magazine article in a dentist's office. I happened to be on a board running a task force about joint venture relationships. And that's the way it works, by the way, is you have these coincidences of things you don't think are connected that are all God's way of giving you information that helps you reach a conclusion. So I get this idea for something to do in my mortgage company. I won't bore you with the details, but it was a whole new approach to getting business by going into small to medium-sized companies and enhancing their HR benefits by offering financial education for their employees that were now in an era of the internet where they were going online and they were buying services, they didn't know what they were doing. So I created this. I had my employees get into it, and it exploded our company's volume. And as a result, 3 years later, we had a group of Tennessee bankers come in and buy our company, along with 4 other companies. Now, I'm a year into that, a 3-year contract, feeling like this is great. Now I've got a little money in the bank, didn't get rich, a little money in the bank. And what am I going to do after this gig's over in 2 more years? Well, wouldn't you know, they come in and they fire all of us. And now I'm 48 years old. I've been fired. My worst fear in life, because it's now public shaming. It's a big letter A on my sweater, like the scarlet letter. And I think my life is over. And so I go home to tell my wife that she made a mistake and she needs to divorce me and find somebody else. And she reminded me of the phrase, your life's a gift from God, what you do is your gift back. And that it was time for me to have the courage to try to look forward in my life and do boldly what my heart tells me is my reason to be. So I created a company called Integrated Mastery Programs that has literally changed my life, because it's given me a 25-year experience of really sharing with people the conclusions of a long life that's gone through a lot, and invoking out of them their long life and what they've gone through a lot to create a higher sense of identity and meaning in life. So why do I put you through this story? Because the power of inspiration cannot be underestimated. And if you keep an inspired future in front of you and you keep your eye on it, my experience in life, and therefore my belief that I would offer you to try on and consider, is that God will reward your inspired focus on the future you desire, but in His time and in His way. It may not show up the way you think it's going to, but you can trust that it's going to lead you to the answers, not just for what's troubling you today, but to actually the answers for why you were born in the first place. What's your thoughts about all that, Brother
Oh my
Stacy?
goodness. I've heard you tell that story a number of times, Al, and every time I am reminded of some things that are important for me personally. And I think oftentimes people go through life thinking when you hear this term vision or purpose or mission, you think that's just a corporate thing. That's just what happens in business. But really, when you think about inspiration, it comes from a vision of something that is worthwhile to pursue, right? And so I would really just encourage people. It certainly has been true for me, particularly in the most immediate phase of my life, to be inspired by something that keeps you looking beyond the plaster wall of red lights. And it gives you excitement. It gives you hope, gives you faith. It gives you courage. It gives you strength. You can set aside fear. You can set aside worry. You can set aside anxiety. That doesn't mean you don't have personal responsibilities every day to yourself, your family, your community. But you have this opportunity to see things that we won't see if we can't look beyond the plaster wall. And so I also think some of the things, Al, that come out for me is when you describe that story about what happened to you in your life. And quite frankly, I'm going through some similar things that have lined up for me. I've become a believer there's no such thing as coincidences. I believe there's a design for every human life. It doesn't mean everyone watching this believes that, and I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. For me, I look at my life and think about, oh, now I can look back and see that's exactly why that happened that way. It may have been uncomfortable or difficult for me at the time, but somehow I survived it. Somehow I still have a roof over my head and I have plenty of food and clothing. And so life is good. And so if I can move from scarcity thinking to abundance and look beyond the tyranny of the urgent today to what is possible, it's funny how our growth happens when that happens. We can't grow by just trying to stay the same every day and just be protected and safe. I was sharing with Al earlier today that there's been some stages in my life where I could really feel my growth as a human being. And others long periods of time, 10, 15 years, where it's like, life was so easy and so good. I didn't grow. I didn't have to sacrifice anything. And probably what happens during that is we get a little internal. Maybe we start getting a little more selfish. Maybe we start not only not seeing the vision of the future, but we quit worrying about the red lights on the wall too. And so I think we've got to always be a little uncomfortable in our lives to grow. So Al, I don't know what else we can share with people about strategies of how do you look to the future and how do you train your mind to look beyond the fact that, man, if I don't get these things done today, somebody's going to be disappointed with me. Any thoughts on that?
I think that I think it's a regular practice that, like a muscle, gets easier as you practice it. But I think what it comes down to, at least for me and in my experience of my life and maybe my clients' lives, is you have to realize that your reality and my reality are really reflections of your state of mind. They really, all that's going on in the outside world with circumstances is an invitation to a certain mindset, a certain heart set, a state of being, state of mind. And frankly, we're designed as physical organisms to have a survival instinct that starts with risk and fear. I mean, just by the nature of being alive, we have to start literally every morning looking for the saber-toothed tiger that's entered the cave that's going to get me. Now, that may be money, it may be relationships, it may be health. Our whole life, we're going to face that saber-toothed tiger of fear. But we have to remember, and if we don't know this, we need to find somebody like a Stacy Harding at Hourglass that can help you find this place where you can be invited to a new perspective that allows you an inspired sense of possibility in the future. Really, it comes down to self-leadership. Leadership's the ability to awaken a sense of future unlimited by the past that's inspirational, and that is so inspirational, it moves you outside the realm of that natural fear that holds you back. So really, every moment of every day is a choice of faith or fear, in my mind. And faith, we distrust because we're in the skinny branches where maybe it won't happen, and then I'll feel stupid forever having trusted that it might happen. But faith is the way you unlock the door. And not just faith for the sake of faith that one day when I die, I'm going to go to heaven. Right now, faith in today, in what today could hold. Who are you going to meet randomly at the grocery store, or an old colleague or someone that is just going to say something to you that's going to open a door? We're in a magic castle. I think this is what Christ was talking about, is there are many, what did it say, many castles within your
Many,
house.
many rooms in heaven. Yeah.
So I think this is what's being talked about, is life is a dynamic evolution of experience with a constant invitation to two realities for each one of us. Is it going to be dark out of our fear, even if we're living a wealthy life, if we have jets and we have boats and we have houses and all that, but secretly we're unhappy? That's the way it goes for most people if they simply passively let the circumstances of their life determine their mindset. But if we have the courage to consider the drunken veil and the idea that I can create an inspired place in my mind and focus on it to the point that I will manifest some version of it. May not look like what I'm seeing. It'll be better because the source, whatever you call that source, is going to have it be not only what is better, but why I need to get there. But we have to earn it, starting with the decision of practicing faith over fear in each moment of the day. And we awaken that faith through inspiration. What do you think, Stace?
It was occurring to me that people might interpret this discussion that we're talking about just your professional life, your career. And so that's, again, back to that previous statement that typically when you think about vision and purpose, that sounds like a corporate mantra. This is for every area of your life. So have a vision for your relationship with your spouse or significant other, for your children,
Right.
for your faith, for your physical well-being, for your financial well-being, all the things that make up the wellness of a human life. And this idea of balance, and having balance is really driven by having clarity. And therefore, you put yourself in a position to start saying no to the red lights that get in the way.
Yeah.
To some degree. I think it's one of the greatest things I ever heard from a coach was make a list of all the things you'll stop doing or stop thinking about. Because we always create to-do lists. How about the don't do list? Maybe we should do that. Al, maybe we could wrap this up with tell a quick story about the balance of riding a bike. You shared that with me earlier today, and I thought it was great.
Well, you remember when you were a little kid and you were going from a trike to a two-wheeler, and your parents were telling you it's time to be a big boy, a big girl, and ride the bike, and I'll hold the seat so you don't fall over. But you wonder, how's this thing going to stay up? So you have support. You have somebody with you that allows you to kind of begin. And once you start riding, remember that moment when you finally were on your own and you realized that your world just expanded. You could now ride 3 blocks to the grocery store. You could explore things you never could before, go out in that field and jump off dirt ponds and whatever. So that to me represents the magic of balance. And this comes out of a dialogue I was having with a client on a call yesterday about wealth, that I was talking about the balance point of wealth, and that wealth isn't just money, but wealth to me in what I call level 4, in my level 4 intuition, is when you have enough of whatever you need. I honestly have no desire to have a $10 million net worth or $100 million net worth or $1 billion. That seems to be what everybody wants. I don't want that because, frankly, I think it creates just as many problems as you think it solves. It's more houses, more maintenance, more employees, more blah, 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 right? I want to have the balance point of material worth where I simply don't have to think about money. Then I can focus on things that matter more than money. But wealth isn't just money. It is your health. I want to have enough health where I don't have to think about health. And I earned that through good habits to prevent things that would have me have to think about health. So I would just offer that riding a bicycle is a good analogy for the magic of the balance point in all that we do. And while we live in the West, where there tends to be a constant drive of more, more, more is just as problematic as less. And the magic of life is finding the balance point where you can forget about these lesser invitations to pettiness in favor of the great possibility of your life. And if you do that, and then you practice that in how you provide that to other people, I think when you get to the end of your life, you're not going to fear death, nor will you be unclear as to why you were born in the first place. Bring us home, Brother Stacy. We got
Beautiful.
1 minute left.
Like that child riding a bike for the first time and experiencing the joy of freedom, because I think that's a lot of it. That's what we wish for folks that we're talking to in your lives, an area of your life. Find that joy of freedom. It'll bring you peace and happiness, and more importantly, it'll bring you significance in your life. Thanks for watching as always, and we love chatting about these things. It really feeds us as much as anybody that might be watching. So Al, thanks for your time with me again, brother, and we wish you all the very best. Have a wonderful day.
Love you guys. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.